After being ambushed by a large number of judges at Comic-Con, you'd think I wouldn't be much of a fan of Judge Dredd. My name's Charlie, and this is what's distracting me right now. So Dredd is a reboot of an adaptation of a popular comic book titled Judge Dredd. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic dystopian future where everything sucks and law enforcement is solely in the hands of people called judges. They're basically like super police, knowing every law and sanction and acting as judge, jury and executioner, dealing out justice that they think is sanctioned. The film follows two characters, Dredd, who's obviously the title character, who's some sort of gruff, by-the-book, undiscriminatory, faceless judge played by Carl Urban. And they follow the comic books much more closely. He never removes his helmet, meaning that all you see is his chin and mouth. So I've got to hand it to Carl Urban. He can get a massive amount of emotion and acting work out of just his voice and mouth. It's awesome. This isn't like the 1995 Stallone movie. I am the law! Yeah, all the acting is done by Carl Urban's mouth and voice, and this pretty much symbolises that Judge Dredd is an incorruptible symbol of justice that could really be anyone. It's kind of what the Dark Knight trilogy tried to convey in their meaning, but ultimately ended up in just being Bruce Wayne or Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I love Dredd's voice in this too. Mama is not the law. I am the law. It's intimidating, but not to the point where it would be over the top and a bit campy, you know. Where's the trigger? The film is really more about a rookie called Anderson, who's played by Olivia Thirlby, who I immediately fell in love with upon first viewing. She's awesome. She's this psychic rookie judge that is pretty much the yin to Dredd's yang, whereas Judge Dredd is pretty black and white about the law. She is pretty emotionally invested into this thing and gets the better of her at times, which allows for some pretty cool character development considering the simple story. Over the course of the film, she slowly becomes more accustomed to life as a judge. The first life she takes is pretty startling to her, and at the end, she's just gunning people down like a motherfucker. To the point where she has to go through a mind battle that was awesome with a prisoner that she captured and they have to drag around with them. So yeah, the plot is pretty simplistic considering how deep and developed the characters are. They go after this drug lord called Mama, who's played by Lena Headey, who's an awesome villain by the way, who is manufacturing and peddling this drug called Slow-Mo, which I'll get to in a bit. She's got control of this massive building complex that not only do people live in, but this gang operates, and she puts it on lockdown when the judges get in there, so it essentially becomes like the comic book version of Die Hard, which I really like. You know, Die Hard with awesome weapons and shoes. A simplistic plot isn't exactly bad considering they spent a lot of time developing the characters and action, but I would have preferred a bit more depth, considering I just watched Memento as well. The action in this is pretty cool as well, especially due to the judge's main weapon called the Lawgiver, which allows for some pretty creative action actually. It looks just like a pistol, but it's got pretty much every weapon that you can think of packed inside it. It's got high explosives, incendiary ammo, armor piercing, and my favourite, which is Hot Shot, which Judge Dredd uses to shoot into some guy's mouth and it burns his head from the inside out, and it's awesome. This allows for some pretty creative action scenes that make sense within the lore of the universe. Now, I remember when I heard about the slow motion in this film, I thought it would be pretty gimmicky and that I would get annoyed by it, but I found it surprisingly okay. It makes sense in the context of the universe because they have something called slow-mo drug, which basically makes your perception of time 1% of what it actually is. And it also adds this sort of sparkly, colory effect to it, and I thought that was quite nice. It allowed for a pretty awesome action sequence where Judge Dredd and Anderson go into this apartment where a load of junkies and dealers are. They start ripping faces, and it's awesome because you can see every drop of blood from the bullet holes. It's really graphic and great and awesome. There were a couple of times when it was a bit unnecessary, but overall I liked when it was used. I would have much preferred it if they'd only used it 2 or 3 times, but I surprisingly did not get bored of it. They used it sparingly, funnily enough. The main thing that annoys me really is the CGI. It's pretty low budget and does look pretty awful. Well, not awful exactly, but it looks kind of like an early PS3 cutscene. It's a bit dated. I don't know if dated's the right word considering the movie only came out last year. That's mostly down to the 45 million budget, I guess, which sucks for the movie, especially considering that it didn't make that back in the box office. Thankfully, DVD sales and Netflix managed to save it from bombing completely and actually made it turn a profit. But because of the box office bomb, I can only see, if a sequel is even made, it being as low budget or even less budget than Dredd is. And I would love to see a higher budget film of this that is actually successful. It will be amazing. We as fans and moviegoers owe it to ourselves to make this sequel happen and make it good. So in conclusion, Dredd is a very good action film that saved the franchise from the awful 1995 Stallone version. You betrayed the law! It has great characters, cool action, and best of all, there's no Rob Schneider and Judge Dredd doesn't have a face. Now, if only Marvel could apply that to Deadpool. To cap this off, what is your favourite slow-mo scene in a movie? Mine personally used to be the bullet time sequence from The Matrix, which I really love, but now I'd have to say it's the slow motion bare knuckle fight scene from the first Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movie. You see all the ripples in the actor's body as every single punch is carried out, and I thought it was pretty cool in the context of the scene, and a pretty cool scene altogether. As always, I'm Charlie, and I am the law.